Hello. In this episode, I wish to go on record about the Kythavilakom Saga. What is Kythavilakom in the first place? Kythavilakom happens to be my paternal, ancestral, if I wanted to use the word, home, my dad's own home. I thought it would be very appropriate to have a record of my dad's own family, brother and others. Well, this Kythavilakom ancestral home is on the north side of what is called Pilavila, on the road from Kattathura to Thrivikramji. Well, maybe from Kattathura junction, it is a T-like junction that with the Thiruvananthapuram Nagarkoil road. From the T-like junction, Pilavila will be, say, like 5 furlongs. Not really like 1 kilometer, within under a kilometer. Under a kilometer, let us say, on the north side of the road. Well, this home, Kythavilakom, is the home where I and my 2 elder brothers grew up through their, high school before we shifted to Thiruvananthapuram, especially in Thiruvananthapuram near Kavadiyar. Kavadiyar is, those days was a very sleepy place for many reasons. I'm talking about, when we shifted, it was 1952. So I was I just entered a middle school, that's all. Okay, back to Kythavilakom. Kythavilakom home is a 3-part home, a 3-part complex. The eastern part, traditionally in all over Kanyakumari district, most of the places it is called Padipura. Well, it's not a large complex, but in an average medium-sized place. Then, to the Padipura is actually facing easterly. Behind this Padipura, there is what is called a Thai Vida. In other words, that is actually the core of the complex. And further to the backside of the Thai Vida, or that is located Arapura. Ara means storage. In other words, theoretically, the entire crop, rice paddy after what is called harvest is cured, dried, etc. And then some portion will be specially cured to get it right for creating the seeds for the next crop, and the remainder, the bulk, will be stored in what is called patayam. Patayam, is a vault-like thing. Only difference, it is made of wood, timber. And this is actually disconnected to, it just sits on the floor inside a room. In other words, it is protected from all kinds of weather, vagaries of the weather, and also from the so-called pests, which are very common. So, then, who are all living there? Well, before that, I think I would like to introduce some words like, some place names like Kanyampuram, and then Karippuram, and then some other village in the, Kanyampuram and Karippuram are on the right bank is Kanyampuram, and the right bank is Kanyampuram. Left bank is Kanyampuram, right bank is Karippuram. Then there is a village called Vayakallur. Vayakallur, there is a home named Thrivikramji. Thrivikramji is everywhere. Wherever there is a lot of Vada, it is called Thrivikramji, probably. Well, why these places are mentioned here? Well, when I was a kid, in the primary class, I saw my dad. That's the elder brother Valyachan, our uncle. And then I saw another man, Shankara Narayana Pillai, who happens to be the cousin of my dad and my uncle Valyachan. And also I saw a grand old man, Neelakanta Pillai. Neelakanta Pillai is actually, what I recall is it was like a terror because the Narayana Pilla and Parameswaran Pilla, my dad, were Neelakanta Pillai's nephews, sister's children. There was a girl child also who died after delivering a baby boy, who is named Damodaran Nair. So this is actually the crowd. Neelakanta Pillai and son Sankaranarayana Pillai lived in the, of course there is a Ammumma, Appupan is granddad. So Neelakanta Pillai I called naturally Appupa. And Appupan's wife is a very, very fair complexioned old woman who used only 2 pieces of torth, one as a loin cloth and the other to hide, not intentionally, to wear in the to cover the upper body. Most of it will be out anyway, like what is called two bags of milk. So Ammumma, I used to call Ammachi. That is the way in Kanyakumari district Ammumma is addressed. It's a Sundari, because she is the only fair complexioned, slightly whitish person in the entire Kythavilakom family. Of course, my Amma, definitely she was a dark complexioned woman. She came from a place called Arumana, got married to my dad and came to our home. Then Valyachan actually went back to Karippuram to acquire his wife. And in fact, Valyachan, my dad's and Valyachan's dad, that man, whoever it is, he was from Karippuram, and I have never had even any glance of that great man, because he probably died very early. Those days, a sickness, an illness can take the life of a person. I never seen my dad's or uncle's Amma. Okay, so the custom was, once the mother dies, then the Karanavar, what is called the in Malayalam it is called Marumakatayam. In other words, the children will be at the disposal of the paternal people of the parents or the dad's side. So my uncle, my dad, and their lone sister, they all came back from the Karipuram side over to Kattathura, Kythavilakom. This is what I guess, or rather I make a scientific guess about, because I have not seen either my paternal grandma or paternal granddad. All that I have seen is my dad and his brother uncle, then Mr. Damodaran Nair, whose mother is their sister, my dad's sister, who died. And of course I saw Shankaranarayana Pillai, Maman, Ammavan, uncle, and his dad, Appuban, Neelakanta Pillai. That, like I said, terrorizing. Not only that, he was such a very powerful man, and everyone in the village around had consulted him before making any good or bad move. Only with the sanction of Sri Kythavilakom Neelakanta Pillai, anything will happen in those days. I'm talking, those days will be like 100 years ago. Keep that in mind. I am near 80. Rather, I will be reaching my 80th birthday this coming October. So think of that. It's a century ago, definitely. Now, what happens to the rest? So, rest of the story. Now, I will go over with my paternal uncle, Vallichan, and his family first. I will go to Shankaranarayana Pillai Maman and Appupan and whatever happened to the Shankaranarayana Pillai family. And finally, only I will go to my own. So, what had happened was Vallichan, he had married a woman. Again, he went back to Varavila or whatever in Karipuram, got married to a girl, a woman. And of course, naturally, he had set up his home back in Kythavilakom, in the Padipura. And when I saw Vallichan's wife, Valiamma, as a kid, Valiamma was a thin, lean, and very quiet-spoken woman. Most of the time, she will be in the kitchen doing this or that, or just taking rests in portion of the kitchen. There is a reason for it. One, when I was in my kid days, Valiamma had only one daughter, Bhargavi Chechi, and that Chechi was married to Mr. Govinda Pillai, who was a now village officer. These days it is called, the job is called. But before that name was Parvatyar. So this man, I have seen him, I saw him when he died as a dead person. We went for the cremation, etc. This gentleman was hard of hearing. So what I remember is Valiamma stuck to kitchen and the environs, primarily because her son-in-law was living there in that home, and Bhargavi Chechi and two kids. And Bhargavi Chechi had one elder girl is named Ambika, and a younger boy is called Mani. Mani is actually, his name is Ayyappan Thambi, and Ambiga is Ambiya Bai Tangachi, like that. Okay, that Tangachi, Tambi Sthanam are titles, surnames rather. These are derived from the maternal side because the Thrivikramji family, for some reason they had this surname Tambi. So, Ambiya Bai Tangaji, Ayyappan Tambi. That are the two children. Ayyappan also called Mani, alias Mani, as of my age roughly. We studied in the same class together until I completed my primary school, or we completed our primary 1 to 5, etc. Then, when I in 1952, I think my family shifted to Thiruvananthapuram. In other words, my mom, 2 brothers, me, and of course my dad. Of course, dad was as a primary school teacher. He was he had to continue in the Kythavilakom home for a while, and until he got a transfer to Thiruvananthapuram. Well, it took 2 or 3 years after our shifting. And dad retired from the primary school in so-called Nandangoda primary school in Thiruvananthapuram. Anyway, so what has happened to my uncle Valyachan? Valyachan's family they were living comfortably. Valyachan was living in what is called a place he had called himself a simple city, which is actually a very tiny 4-room house in Katathura, very near to Katathura Junction, which is actually like a club. Those people of his age and younger age used to gather in this little place for playing cards or chit-chatting or joking or, things of that sort. Because Valyachan was, sported, I shouldn't say that Valyachan had a beard, because I also have a beard. It's a contagious disease. Valyachan had a huge beard, etc. Valyachan was actually 6 plus 3 or 4 in height, a strongly built man with very long arms, etc., etc. And plus, he's also kind of, he wouldn't hesitate to do any cruel act on animals or people. That also is one of the, if you want to call it a bad side of a person, yes, it is. So, Valyachan will definitely go to Kythavilakom every day for lunch. The breakfast and the supper will be delivered to Simple City, which is hardly half a kilometer, a little more than half a kilometer from Kythavilakom home. And when I was in the middle school, I started the high school, Ambiya Chechi got married to one Madhusudanan Nair, who then those days was working in the PWD, the so-called public office these days in the Thiruvananthapuram. And this man, soon after marriage, built a home for them in the far end of the Thrivikramji lane in Shastamangalam. And obviously, as soon as the building was, housewarming was over, the new family of Ambiya Chechi and Madhusudan and Chetan, they shifted over to this home. And the elder people like Valyachan. Okay, in that meantime, Valiyamma died. But then Valyachan was actually taken care of by Chechi, that is Bhargavi Chechi. And also, once they took turn to be here in Shastamangalam, in Ambiya Chechi's home. And over those years, then what happened was, Ambiya Chechi's dad, Govindapilla, died. And then, of course, Valyachan also had to call it a day. So, several deaths happened. And money, in fact, Ayyappan Thambi, shifted to, when he was in the high school, to Sastamalan Raja Keswadas High School. And he studied class 10 there, up to class 10 there. Then, of course, he was not a hard-working guy. And I would say definitely unlike me, no doubt about it. Then he got married to one girl from a Kurup's family, or Kurup family in the far end of the Srirangam lane. And then Mani also got a extra departmental post office officer's job in a place called Pulippanam near Kattathur. So Mani, once after marriage and after getting this job, moved with his family back to Kythavilakom, Padipura. And Mani started living there. And of course, Mani had a very tragic end because he had an affliction of carcinoma or some kind of brain tumor, which was discovered very late. And Mani died at a very young age. And I think probably after in the early 80s. So then Mani had two children, one boy and one girl. After his death, the residual family came back to Kurup's Lane, to their paternal home. And this boy and girl are still around, and the woman also is still around and living reasonably well. These days, reasonably well is a great thing. And then, of course, what happened to Ambika Chechi? So, Ambika Chechi also got her mother, Bhargavi Chechi, to PTP, to Srirangam Lane home. And in the meantime, my brother also involved in some degree. He helped Madhu Chetan to sell the so-called Srirangam Lane home and buy another spot and one-story building in PTP Nagar. And of course, he built another floor to it, and it is a big house now. And that is the place where Ambika Chechi, Madhu Chetan, and his children, 4 or 5, I think. And then Bhargavi Chechi. Because everybody else is gone. And they were living in this PTP Nagar house. And Bhargavi Chechi, of course, she lived right through her 90s and then died. Madhu Chetan also in his 80s and then died. And sadly, Madhu Chetan's son, Jyotish Kumar, who used to work for the the Sarkar studio in Thiruvallam, government studio, cinema studio in Thiruvallam. He used to work there. He also had some problem, he died. And the family of Madhu Chetan, the children, his children are in Thiruvananthapuram. In the PTP Nagar home, one girl with his family. Madhu Chetan's daughter and son-in-law and children are living. And the rest are in Thiruvananthapuram only. So that is how the Vallichan, my dad's brother's family, reached the modern day. Now, I have to make a mention about Mr. Damodaran Nair, who is the nephew of my own dad, who lost his mother soon after childbirth. And the baby boy was looked after by Vadyamma, actually, as one son. And he grew up. I would say that he is kind of what shall I say, what is appropriate to it? Not a moron, or maybe moron. Whatever he thinks is correct for him. He doesn't care who thinks, who does not agree with his views. He will stick to his points. He's a very dark complexion, and those days I thought he was a big man, but now when I look back, he's not even as tall as I am, hardly 5 feet. And I saw him very only rarely wearing a shirt and a dhoti. Otherwise, he always wears a dhoti. And he is a man with a lot of hair on his body, black hair, much more than what he had on his scalp. And he also, after growing up, he went back to what is called Karippuram or Kanjampuram, whatever that place is, that route, and got married to one woman from there, who actually is related to or a sibling of my eldest brother's father-in-law, late Thambi Maman. And unfortunately, I cannot verify the factuality of whatever I am saying. And 99% of the time it is correct. What I say is correct. But there is no one who can verify and cross-check whatever I say here. People are there, but they hardly remember anything that happened yesterday. My disadvantage is I can think, and certain things are very distinctly clear in my mind, even though it had happened during my pre-primary school or primary school days. So, Mr. Damodaran Nair and Mrs. Damodaran Nair, they lived in the place where we used to live in the Kythavilakom home, Kythavilakom complex, in the Thai Veed. There's a reason also. That Thai Veed was actually, during partition, a portion was given to my dad, a smaller portion was given to the nephew, my dad's nephew, Damodaran Nair. So at some point in time, naturally there were some kind of friction. For, this is my home. No, my dad never claimed that it is his home. If it is his home, his nephew's home, let him take it. So when we shifted to Thiruvananthapuram, my father also shifted later on. This portion that my father owned was given away to this his nephew, Mr. Damodaran Nair. Damodaran Nair had only one child, a girl. She is called Rajam. Even she doesn't know the history. She is not a very old woman. She is hardly in her 50s. Married to one Mr. Ayyappan Pillai. Ayyappan retired from the Tamil Nadu police service. And of course, Ayyappan doesn't know anything about the antecedents of Damodaran Nair and his own mother-in-law, let us say. Because he not these days, even in these days, the keeping track of all the past is very difficult. So for some reason I am, narrating all this, because after a long time I looked around for people who I could verify these things with. I couldn't find any. So finally I thought I will go on record about Kythavilakom, because that is my dad's home, my dad's own elder brother, my dad's own cousin Shankaranarayana Pillai and Appupan Nilaganda Pillai, and also Damodaran Nair, who is also no more, who is my dad's nephew. So that is what the Padipura fragments, or segment rather, instead of fragments, Padipura segment of Kythavilakom family now stands. In other words, only the youngest generation is around. Now, the rest of the story in another episode that will follow soon. Thank you.